Which prehistoric time period was the most dangerous? From the blistering winds and scorching deserts of the Permian to the jump-scare bayous of the Cretaceous, we'll be going through each period of the Phanerozoic in chronological order and ranking them according to their survivability. For each time period, we're covering food availability, shelter, potential weapons, and the threats presented by dangerous animals. Don your time suit and put your prediction in the comments because it's time to make the jump. While we're leaping through Vividen Corporation's patented chronovortex, let's cover the scoring system. Each category has a potential score of 1 to 10, with 1 meaning lowest survivability and 10 meaning highest. That means the higher a time period scores, the better your chances are of surviving it for the 4 weeks we're leaving you there. Additionally, you're being dropped into the past with only a disease-resistant time suit marked with our logo to entice potential sponsors back in the homeworld, a rebreather, and a water purifier. Dehydration, bacteria, and viruses are the biggest killers after all, but deaths by illness don't lead to high ratings. And this game show, my time-displaced friend, is all about the spectacle. Just don't let your stuff get damaged. That'll ruin your day. The Cambrian will be our first stop. The period that is famous for having the first major onset of complex life was warm, with high volcanic activity and carbon dioxide content contributing to a greenhouse atmosphere. Oxygen content gradually increases with a temporary spike at the end of the Cambrian. The continents hang out in the southern hemisphere, with high sea levels keeping the land masses from becoming too large. There's nothing to do on land at this point except poke bacterial mats and wait around to die, so you'll need to use your time suit, which doubles as a wetsuit, to go into the water to find food. Your rebreather only functions down to a depth of 50 meters. Giving you equipment that's too good is against the spirit of the game after all. And what is there to hunt? Trilobites are incredibly common and diverse in the Cambrian, offering significant calorie sources if you can get through their tough calcite armor. Tychopterids are the ones you're likely most familiar with, although asaphids have the biggest members in the form of Isotellus. This 2-foot-long trilobite could fill the belly of some of the hungriest time-displaced volunteers, but as a burrower, it's hard to catch. Some Lycadan trilobites tend to be more spiny, making them unappealing to native predators but easy for you to drop a rock on. Think of trilobites as the Cambrian equivalent of lobsters, perhaps difficult to prepare properly, but potentially delicious. If you're not a fan of armored prey, we've got other options. Lobopodians are soft-bodied creatures that are related to arthropods, and while many have spiny weaponry or intimidating mouth parts, others are small and would be easy for a human to capture. Just try to avoid the spines on hallucigenia. We don't know what kind of venom they might be packing. Amisquia is another tiny softy, an inch-long gnathotherin with an unknown defense system. Picaya, a basal chordate, is the animal most likely to taste like a fish, except for the actual agnathan fish on the menu like Hycuichthys, Mylocumingia, and Zongjanicthys. There isn't a way to build fires in the Cambrian given the complete lack of fuel on land, so it looks like raw fish is the most familiar meal you'll have out here. If you're into escargot, you might enjoy the small-shelled invertebrate Haplophrentys. Break the shell using rocks, sparse corals, or broken shards of other shells and eat the soft part inside, just like how Gusteau used to make. You may have noticed a dire lack of fruit and veggies. That's because they don't yet exist as you understand them. The closest you'll get is marine macroalgae like Cynosalindra and Marpolia, which might feel and taste like eating gritty grass. You might find a couple of very small primitive land plants, but most of those show up later. This will likely result in significant vitamin deficiencies that could cause conditions like scurvy. Does that make you a Cambrian pirate? Us humans, evolved to function as omnivores, obtaining essential nutrients from a variety of sources. When 99% of available calories are from spiky invertebrates you've never eaten before, you're liable to suffer serious nutritional issues. The Vividen Corporation would like to take this moment to apologize to any vegans or proponents of the carnivore diet who signed up for the time jump. Your survival rate is going to be next to 0. We take no responsibility for any deaths, injuries, discomforts, or other negative conditions caused by volunteers' dietary choices, lack thereof. Shelter is virtually non-existent. Trees haven't even been thought of yet. Bacterial mats and stromatolites cover the sea-shore interface. There is only you, baked sand, unyielding stone, and the merciless radiation of the sun. Some of those effects may be mitigated by spending a majority of your waking hours in the deeper water, searching for food away from the most intense sunlight exposure, but that is when you become vulnerable to other threats. While the Cambrian was not a time of megafauna, it was known for its alien-seeming predators. Cat to dog-sized radiodonts like Anomalocaris and Falciscaris might not see you as in their ideal food size bracket, but their sharp appendages are definitely capable of damaging your precious time suit. Omnidens is another soft-bodied predator that could inflict significant damage on you while you're exploring the seafloor in search of food, leading to rapid blood loss and limited motor function. The good news is that none of these apex predators are specifically adapted to eat animals your size, so the attacks inflicted upon you will either be accidental or in self-defense. Now for scores, and remember, the higher the number, the better your chances of surviving. The Cambrian earns a 2 for food, a 1 for shelter, a 4 for weapons, and 9 for threats, giving it a total survivability score of 15 out of 40. The Ordovician ran for 43 million years. Surely things have improved from an ecotourism and safety perspective, right? Most of the world's landmass is still in the south, and the climate experiences dramatic shifts throughout the period's duration. We see an incredibly warm, high sea level greenhouse world at the beginning of the Ordovician, but the period ends with an ice age that makes the most recent one, the one with the mammoths, look like a melted popsicle. Ice covered almost all of Earth's landmass during the Hernantian glaciation, causing a devastating mass extinction that killed off 2/3 of marine life. As for land life, well, there wasn't much to speak of to begin with. Non-vascular plants like liverworts make an appearance along the shoreline, and green algae is still around in shallow water. Some arthropods may have ventured onto land towards the late Ordovician. Giant basal arthropod for dinner, anyone? But seriously, having large, armored, potentially quite dangerous animals join you in what was once your safe space during the Cambrian will wreak psychological havoc on most of you. We expect that to compensate, you'll spend much of your time in the water again, giving yourself the illusion of control. Using the rocks, coral, and shell pieces you find lying around, you could hunt trilobites, although many Ordovician varieties were exceptionally spiny and didn't have much meat compared to the effort required to process them. Jurassic was a herded radiodont the size of a grown man, but fortunately was a filter feeder. In theory, you could take one down if you could fashion a primitive spear from an empty orthocone shell and aim for the underside, but it's likely too fast to catch for your weak underwater throwing. The most suitable meal options will be your own closest relatives. By that I mean fish. The armored jawless fish. These fish were bizarre enough to be Pokemon, and not just the cute, cuddly mascots either. Thelodontids were the common ones in the Ordovician and were slow, with lots of meat on them. Shelter is much the same situation as the Cambrian. No land plants are anywhere near large enough or woody enough to use as building materials or to reliably start fires, which means you'll be out in the elements and eating all of your food raw. We suggest collecting the salt for brocks on the shoreline and using it to preserve your leftovers, especially the fish. Starvation is dramatic enough that the game masters will allow it to happen, but we like to give you fine folks a fighting chance. Speaking of fighting, you'll be dealing with gigantic armored cephalopods in the Ordovician. Endoceras was a 3 to 6 meter nautiloid with a shell like a bullet, using its powerful, sucker-lined arms to wrap up prey and crush it to bits before devouring its victims in its sharp beak. Fortunately, most of its body is its shell, but its head is still large enough to cause notable damage to a human hand or arm. The Ordovician is better than the Cambrian in some ways and worse in others, with a 3 for food. More fish are good, but you're still going to be suffering from serious malnutrition and scurvy-adjacent conditions. Shelter is another 1. You're basically guaranteed skin cancer, and if you get dropped off in the late Ordovician, then you have to deal with the entire continent being covered in ice. Not having access to fire kind of sucks, we know. Weapons stay stable at 4, and faunal threats bumps down to 8. Endoceras is much more dangerous than Anomalocaris, but it still pales in comparison to the creatures that will appear later. That's an overall Ordovician score of 16 out of 40. 1 point higher than its predecessor. The Silurian period only lasted 24 million years, but it had a huge impact on the global ecosystem. After the end Ordovician extinction, the one where everybody froze to death, animals, fungi, and plants started taking land seriously. It was a much warmer planet during this time after all, with sea levels that rose and fell, and with intense storms battering shorelines of the continents, which still seem to have most of their landmass in the southern hemisphere. Vascular plants like lycophytes appear, able to grow to larger sizes and support more complex ecosystems, and arthropods claim the terrestrial lifestyle as their own with a diversification of myriapods like centipedes and millipedes. While the vascular plants, aka plants that can move water inside of their own tissues and don't need to rely on diffusion like bryophytes, of this time period are still mostly small, we at the Vividen Corporation are willing to bet a statistically insignificant amount of money that they provide more calories than the liverwort and algae you were chewing on in the Ordovician. However, the most important contribution that these plants with larger leaf-like structures make is the potential for making actual shelter. Tie the stems together into a blanket, or simply create a compost heap and use the fermentation heat to stay warm like in an alligator's nest. It's gross, but it might keep you alive. Additionally, their root systems and mutualistic relationship with terrestrial varieties of fungus and bacteria creates soil, which is much easier for human hands to manipulate and structure than solid rock. Now you can build sandcastles, or dirt castles. We don't judge. Back to food. We strongly recommend not eating millipedes. They secrete toxins like hydrogen cyanide when provoked, a compound that will rain on your parade even if ingested in small amounts. The best food source is once again fish. These critters show up in the early Silurian and ultimately lead to the tetrapod lineages that resulted in your own illustrious bloodline. The Silurian welcomed some really bizarre ostracoderms that weren't adapted for speed but did provide plenty of calories. You might be able to weave a net of plant stems to capture them since proper spear-making materials haven't shown up yet. Alternatively, you could chase them through the shallows with a sharp piece of coral, Tom and Jerry style. You're not the only one going after the fish, though. Arthropods rule the Silurian Ocean, taking the form of eurypterids. These sea scorpions aren't true scorpions, although they have comparable charisma. They're directly competing with you for food and have strong armor and claws to back up their claim to lunch. Multiple species could easily overpower you and add you to their own menu, like Pterygotus, or Carcinosoma, or Jaquiliteris, or Acutaramus. You get the point. You are in way over your head here. Literally, you're 50 feet below the water. Eurypterids are the apex predators of the Silurian, and their natural defenses would more than compensate for the meager weaponry you're able to scrounge up here. Even a non-lethal tussle with one of the smaller species could critically damage your time suit or result in enough blood loss to seriously impact your foraging ability. At that point, it would be time for our thrilled audience to say goodbye to one of their favorite characters and force us to bring some other minor celebrity onto the show. Nigel is busy on his own mission for Tyrant Prime. Food keeps getting better over time, with the Silurian scoring a 4. It's still not a healthy or varied diet, but Gollum was fine eating mostly fish, so maybe you'll do okay. People will keep watching the show if you're bald and running around in a loincloth. Probably. Shelter goes up to a 2 given the advent of slightly larger plants and proper soil, which you could with great difficulty scrape together into some kind of nest. Weapons also boosts to 5. You can still use shells, coral, and rocks to hunt, but now you could also scavenge sheds of large eurypterids and use their claws as knives, perhaps even turning their sheds into creepy armor. That comes with the cost of faunal threats dropping to a 7. Eurypterids are more dangerous than the orthocones and radiodonts of past years thanks to their increased capability to take down larger game like yourself. That wasn't a fat joke. We don't allow those at Vividen Corporation. We do drop hapless tourists, courageous and highly trained volunteers, into the Devonian period though. You'll love it here. We even have some small land masses in the northern hemisphere now. Ooh, variety. Woody plants go berserk on land, forming continent-blanketing coal forests and beginning to superficially resemble forms that you might find at home. Ooh, familiarity. Ferns appear, triggering your nostalgia for the 1999 Walking with Dinosaurs. Lycophytes, a group of vascular plants that include the incredibly prehistoric-looking club mosses, grow more diverse and much larger, spreading across the land through the use of spores. Lepidodendrales were a type of spore-producing tree with photosynthetic scales covering their trunks, growing up to 40 meters tall. Fruit won't evolve for another 300 million years, so while having woody plants will be a game-changer in terms of shelter, you'd be limited to eating their needles and fronds. But what a game changer. No longer do you have to scrape through soil to build your home. Now you can build a proper lycophyte hut to protect yourself from the merciless elements. Suddenly, building spears from branches, teeth, and the connective tissues of ferns is on the table. Just as critical is the ability to build fires, since adequate fuel was just not a thing until the Devonian. You can cook your food, making it easier for your body to absorb nutrients and eliminating potentially harmful pathogens. Your energy levels are higher, your mood has improved, and you no longer wake up screaming in the middle of the night on a beach surrounded by 2-meter Grim Reaper scorpions. And now that plants are turning CO2 into regular O2, you can even walk around on land without needing your rebreather pack. Quite the upgrade, one might say. Another huge change is how you no longer need to cling to the shoreline to sustain yourself. Freshwater systems like rivers and lakes are all over the various continents of the Devonian, supplying vast forests, and you, with life-giving liquid. Where water and plants go, animals will follow, and that extends to freshwater sarcopterygians. These lobe-finned fish are shallow water hunters with plenty of meat on their bones, and now that you've unlocked spearfishing, will become regular sights on your cookfire. Some are small, easily eaten in a meal or two. If you search for small holes in the mud, you might be able to find lungfish burrows, digging them up and cooking them up in a 1-2 punch of deliciousness. However, keep in mind that the Devonian is the age of fish, and many were more suited to hunting than being hunted. Crocodile-sized carnivores like Adenopteron and Hyneria are perfectly capable of ripping you to shreds should you stray too close to the water's edge, so be careful when fishing. Your splashing around and spear throwing and general human mayhem could easily draw the attention of predators you don't want to confront. Fully aquatic carnivores aren't the only threats in the forest. That was a weird sentence. Fully aquatic carnivores aren't the only threats in forested rivers and lakes, that's better. Early tetrapods, descendants of sarcopterygians that became adapted for an amphibious lifestyle, are capable of walking right up to your lycopod cabin fortress of solitude and biting your ankles when you walk out the door. Tiktaalik probably isn't one of them. It's definitely still primarily a water-type Pokemon. But Acanthostega, Ichthyostega, those are water ground types for sure, and at 1.5 meters long, they're big enough to cause you serious damage should you give them a reason to. Keep your spear handy. Is this foreshadowing for development of an entire prehistoric Pokemon region video sometime in the future? Maybe. Should you go back to the ocean for some daft reason, don't. We seriously advise against it if survival is in your best interest. Carnivorous placoderms rule the saltwater places of the Earth, like the 1.5-ton battering ram armor-crunching Dunkleosteus. Now that you have shelter and food that doesn't depend upon diving into the ocean's endless hungry maw, we don't know why you would do such a thing, but contestants on this game show have done incredibly stupid things before. We put nothing past you people. Looking at you, Danny DeVito. If you're enjoying this Vividen Corporation broadcast so far, please subscribe to let Tyrant Prime know which forms of entertainment to continue creating. And if you like speculative time-swap prehistory content, you might like my book Extinction Obsidian Dawn. It's about the Aztecs versus the Carthaginians, but both sides have psychic dinosaurs. I think it's pretty sweet, and I'm hard at work on the next 2 books in the series. Now back to our show. The Devonian period feels like home compared to the brutal alien landscapes preceding it, earning a solid 5 for food. The nutritional value isn't much better than the Silurian, but with freshwater systems now being a thing, it's much easier to access, and you can cook it now. Big win. Shelter gets a huge buff, going all the way to 7. You can make fire somewhat reliably and build lean-tos or cabin morph structures. This is the first period where the weather and solar radiation aren't just death sentences. Weapons also go up to a 7 now that spears are a legitimate option. Throwing weapons from a distance is a strategy that's much more compatible with your own safety than hacking at giant killer fish with a piece of broken coral. Speaking of giant killer fish, faunal threats sits at a 6. The mixture of tetrapods and fish that both fill the giant murder shoreline niche is uncomfortable, and part of that danger comes from living in the exact same environments as your chief food supplies. However, overall, the Devonian gets a fantastic 25 out of 40. That's still a D- on an American grading scale, which is terrible, but it's a huge improvement over the execution landscapes from earlier in the video. How about the Carboniferous period, the infamous Age of Insects? This period sees significant northbound tectonic drift as Pangaea begins to stir. Frequent shifts in temperature result in glacial cycles that drained and filled the seas, with most of the period being colder than the Devonian. The oxygen levels during the Carboniferous also experienced significant changes, with the beginning of the period relatively low, but reaching up to 30% before the end Carboniferous extinction. That's high enough to cause low levels of oxygen toxicity, including introducing dangerous free radicals into your bloodstream, so make sure your rebreather doesn't get damaged. We're not replacing it for you, those things are expensive. Coal forests pretty much carpet the entire planet. They were so dense and successful that the remains of these ancient trees formed what are now the majority of Earth's coal deposits, getting pressed and preserved into vast coal seams over millions of years. Anoxic swamps were a very popular biome during the Carboniferous, as well as wetlands and the aforementioned forests. Ferns and cycads dominate, retaining their enormous tree forms from the Devonian. Horsetails, which are highly nutritious but can grind your teeth to nubs if you don't remove the outer layer, become widespread and should be one of your most frequent meals. Cook them first and make sure to pick them when the outer cones are still white. They get too stringy afterwards. We want an asparagus analog, not roast vegetables made entirely out of dental floss. Some Carboniferous horsetails like Calamites get 50 meters tall, so don't bother trying to eat those, it usually doesn't end well. This humid forest was heaven for giant arthropods, sure. Arthropleura was a 2.5 meter millipede likely living as an enormous detritivore, eating bits of organic matter off the shores of huge lakes, swamps, and rivers, preferring environments with less trees so it could move freely. Pulmonoscorpius would be one of the most obvious dangers to an unarmed human. It's a scorpion nearly a meter long, after all. We can't forget the seagull-sized griffinfly Meganeura either, which lived towards the very end of the Carboniferous. However, despite the reputation of the period for being a haven for so-called big bugs, its real stars were enormous, predatory amphibians called temnospondyls. These 4-limbed, big-jawed carnivores will be directly competing with you for access to the freshwater fish that crowd the rivers and lakes of the coal forests and swamps. And their ability to freely roam between water and land makes even spearfishing a risky business. It's a good thing you built your Lincoln log house, right? Many temnospondyls had thick protective skull roofs along with bony osteoderm armor, and some even had heavily armored stomachs. Erops was an alligator-sized example with sharp teeth and a monstrous skull, not a neighbor that you want mad at you. Fortunately, there's a lot of food to go around. While freshwater fish are certainly a great source of protein, early sauropsids, the lineage that led to what we call reptiles and birds, are small and typically not too dangerous. Petrolacosaurus and Hylonomus are solid candidates to be taken down by throwing a rock at them. Archaeothyris is an early synapsid, the group that includes mammals, and would also keep you fed for a few days. Finding enough salt to preserve leftover meat will be difficult in the swamp forest, so if that's a priority for you, you'll need to harvest it from the oceans, boiling off seawater in large shells and harvesting what's left behind. Just be careful. the Carboniferous ocean has enormous predators. Cyvodus was a 5 to 6 meter tenacanthoform, a type of elasmobranch closely related to sharks and rays and could easily take you down. Adestus is a holocephalian, the group of elasmobranchs that includes modern-day chimeras. It's another apex predator more than capable of eating a human. If you want to learn more about awesome elasmobranchs, I've got a 20-minute video on the subject. The freshwater systems aren't any safer, unfortunately. Apart from the croc-like temnospondyls and the 2-meter eel frogs like Crassagiranus, which translates to thick tadpole, you'll need to keep a close watch out for the freshwater stapler of death, Rhizodus. It was 5.5 meters long, weighed over a ton, was covered in thick protective scales, and sported 8-inch fangs. It rules these swamps, and everybody knows it, including you. Oh yeah, and freshwater eurypterids are also totally a thing. Check out Heitoresco, a boar-sized triop-shaped creature that rummages through the lakes and rivers, eating small organisms and detritus. It's unlikely to go after you, but we wanted to warn you so you don't get jump-scared if you fall in the water and come face-to-face with one of these beauties. Embolamirs, more croc-like amphibians, round out the roster for mean neighborhood kids you'll need to deal with. Can the Carboniferous beat a D-? For food, it's a 6. Horsetails are known edibles with high nutritional value. Fish are always an option. And now you have terrestrial animals like sauropsids and synapsids to cleanse your palate. One can get bored if all you eat is lobe-finned fish with a side of prehistoric asparagus, after all. Shelter decreases from the Devonian to a 5. Sure, the plants you need to build decent huts are there, but the higher oxygen content towards the end of the period makes devastating forest fires extremely common, making your own fire usage much riskier than it was previously. You can cook your food, but at the potential cost of destroying your entire base and possibly losing your life. Weapons don't change, sticking with a solid 7. Finally, faunal threats drops to a 5. Temnospondyls consistently threaten you on land, by the water, or in the water, and the death stapler and its relatives make swimming or even getting too close to the waterline a potentially deadly activity. And did we mention the giant scorpions? The Carboniferous takes home a 23 out of 40, lower than the Devonian but just barely. A 57% is, unfortunately, an F. I love the Permian. I just had to say it. Those newer to the channel might not be familiar with how much I nerd out over Gorgonopsians, so fair warning. While most people might have only heard of the Permian within the context of its devastating mass extinction, admittedly the worst one in the Phanerozoic, it was a unique and frankly beautiful time in Earth's history. Basically, the entire world was just big Australia. We had one continent, Pangaea, which had forested edges and a mythically sized desert in its center. Pangaea, or all Earth, was surrounded by Panthalassa, all ocean, which makes me wonder if this is some kind of prehistoric compromise between Groudon and Kyogre. The desert in the continent center is not where we would recommend establishing your base. Resources are relatively poor, as you may have guessed, and roving amnio predators with dry skin rove the wasteland in search of prey. It's very Mad Max. The temnospondyls that terrorize the Carboniferous have retreated to the continent's edges, where the presence of large bodies of water is constant and comforting. Don't think they're not a threat, though. The few that are left include fearsome predators, including the 5+ meter Prionosuchus. Take an axolotl and cross it with a gharial, and you've got this delightful creature. The dry environment of Pangaea also keeps spore-producing plants, like the ferns and club mosses we've become accustomed to, restricted to the same green zones as the giant amphibians. Inland, gymnosperms dominate, plants like conifers and ginkgos that produce seeds with protective coverings. Conifer needles are edible, especially when they're freshly produced and soft. You can even boil them to make hot needle juice, a concoction that Uncle Ira would probably hate, but might keep you somewhat sane. Quite a few species of conifers have edible vitamin-rich nuts, and they don't taste too bad either. Try roasting them for a richer flavor. Also, test them one at a time, because we don't know specifically if the Permian varieties were in fact edible. Good thing you're getting paid for this, in street cred anyway. I'm sure you'd rather be paid in food. Freshwater fish are chiefly lungfish during the Permian, whose mud-burrowing habit makes them a reliable food source even in areas where drought is a problem. Just watch out for the shark relatives if you're getting close to large bodies of water, especially the hybodonts and xenacanthoforms. Fortunately, the Permian is when land animals really pop off. Large amniotes cover Pangaea like the quadrupedal, sail-backed, or herbivorous adaphosaurids. They're slow, easy to track, and don't have thick armor, making them great candidates for you to take down with spears, sharpened ribs, or Gorgonopsian saber-toothed knives. Pariasaurs are huge cow-like reptiles, sprawling and heavily armored. Adults would yield too much meat to be practical and would draw the attention of native carnivores, so we recommend taking out young individuals. Given their heavy armor, jumping on their backs and stabbing them in the eyes is the best way to take them down, as their limbs aren't long enough for them to buck you off their backs. If you can form a sling from large leaves, the gliding reptiles known as Wageltosaurids suddenly become viable prey options as well. They're fragile and incapable of true flight, but have enough calories to be worth it. Sarcopterygian fish are of course still around if you feel up for some spearfishing or net casting. You could weave nets from long leaves or fern fronds, although without more processing, spearfishing is likely more reliable. Another excellent source of meat is the Dicynodontia. These herbivorous, tusked therapsids were cute, slow, and absolutely everywhere. Smaller species like Diictodon provide several meals in one animal. It's less practical to try to take on a big omnivorous dinocephalian like Estomenosuchus. It's basically a small hippo with horns, but if you could somehow take the skull of one of these beasties, you could use it as the coolest helmet in prehistory. Think about it. Most of the Permian is fairly cool, so we suggest insulating your dwelling with mud or soil. That will limit dramatic temperature fluctuations in your lycophyte log house and also limit intrusion from biting insects. Try to build in the middle areas of the green zones, away from the apocalyptic desert of the continent's heart, and away from the mega monsoon danger area towards the coast. There's nothing like having your entire cabin torn down by hurricane-force winds when you're trying to sleep, and then coming face to face with a terrified, confused Tyrannosuchus the size of a saltwater crocodile. It's not a positive experience, in case you were wondering. The chief threats vary depending on when in the Permian your Vividen agent decides to put you. The early Permian will have you struggling to coexist with Ophiachodontids and Sphenachodontids, 2 to 4 meter synapsids with powerful skulls and alligator-like bodies. While you could likely outrun them, you'll need to be extremely wary while building your safe house. Dinocephalians were common up until the Middle Permian. Omnivorous and herbivorous forms like the aforementioned Estomenosuchus might be less likely to try to eat you, but that doesn't mean they're not potentially aggressive. Keep your distance anyway. Predatory dinocephalians were hulking bear-like creatures with thick skulls that would mostly ignore the spears and rocks you throw at them. See an Ankylosaurus, think half-ton carnivorous battering ram, and get out of the way as quickly as possible. If extant bears can keep charging after getting shot by modern firearms, you don't want to test the capabilities of a simple spear against an animal with a skull twice as thick as a bear's. Your pride isn't worth dying for, Vegeta. The Middle Permian brings us the heyday of Sphenachodons, like the iconic Dimetrodon, which, despite how it's often lumped by cartoons and toys, is a synapsid, not a dinosaur. Dimetrodon and its close relatives were low-slung, powerfully built carnivores with sharp, stout teeth. Your saving grace is their sprawling gait, which limits their stamina. The Armasuchians, however, had more upright stances and had enough large species to be a threat to you. The largest representative, Eotitanosuchus, was about as big as a black bear, with projected adult sizes even higher at 6 meters and 600 kilograms. Therocephalians thrive in the Middle and Late Permian and are one of the groups that actually survived the end Permian extinction, also known as the Great Dying. Some were actually herbivorous, like Microgomphodon, but the ones you need to watch out for are the bobble-headed saber-toothed carnivores. They're fairly small, ranging from weasel to dog size, but weasels and dogs can still mess you up if they put their mind to it. Some therocephalians may even have been venomous, such as the infamous Eucambersia. I'd forgive you if you don't spend a lot of time outside of your hut during the Permian. There's a lot to be afraid of. That only gets worse during the late Permian, when Gorgonopsians dominate the large land predator niche. Coyote to bear-sized saber-tooths, Gorgonopsians are therapsids that use their wide jaws and enormous teeth to tear out chunks of flesh from big herbivores like Scutosaurus. They're widespread too, liable to cause problems for you whether you build in the desert or the forested rims of Pangaea. Gorgonopsians have more columnar stances than the other big land carnivores of the Permian, making them much faster than Sphenachodons or Dinocephalians. Watch out. That was a lot to cover for the Permian. Food gets a 6. There are far more terrestrial animals of a manageable size than before, and the advent of pine nut analogs means you'll finally be able to start properly supplementing protein with vitamins and minerals. Scurvy's still a huge risk though. Shelter is at a 5. The continental rim is the only narrow band where you're likely to find a good place to build your base, given the apocalyptic desert in Pangaea's center and the superstorms that batter its shoreline, but at least you have trees and soil to work with. Weapons are at a respectable 7, now that saber-toothed knives are on the table. Faunal threats are a 4, continuing the trend of animals getting more dangerous over time. The mix of various types of large land predators, some of which can nearly entirely ignore your weapons, is a dangerous one. That's an overall Permian score of 22 out of 40, similar to the Carboniferous but for different reasons. The food's marginally better, but you're much more likely to be eaten in turn. Not all good things last forever, and the Permian was no exception. The Great Dying, a mass extinction primarily caused by extreme volcanic activity that acidified the oceans and poisoned the atmosphere, wiped out the majority of animal species both on land and in the water. The Gorgonopsians are gone, along with the Eurypterids, Pariasaurs, trilobites, and large numbers of families with the living relatives. But all disasters have a silver lining, and for this extinction, that meant the rise of the Archosaurs, which outcompeted the synapsids for the large vertebrate roles. The Triassic period sees the slow breakup of Pangaea, although the supercontinent is still together for a good chunk of it. As such, we see the same desert core forest rim megabiome from the Permian, but as the continent splits apart, forests increase their influence as it becomes easier for ocean-borne humidity to reach further inland. Long dry spells followed by titanic storms were common. This was a land of primordial extremes. The late Triassic was host to a period of prolonged rainfall known as the Carnian pluvial event, during which the entire planet experienced higher humidity than normal. It didn't rain for a million years straight, but maybe it felt like it sometimes. If your guide drops you off in the late Triassic, be prepared to dig a moat or two around your base. It will also make starting cook fires more difficult, so collect wood when you can and store it inside of your hut or log cabin. You should also have multiple spears on hand because the predators of the Triassic are on a different level than what you've encountered so far. In theory, building a bow would be incredibly useful, but in order to make one that's properly aged and reliable, you'd need to age and dry the wood for a year, or have access to more advanced equipment. We recommend finding some shed teeth or sharp rocks and using them to carve out an atlatl instead. This simple short stick with a small slot at the rear will increase your range and power for spears. That's useful for self-defense, certainly, but also for obtaining food. The trees are full of bizarre arboreal reptiles that won't suspect a projectile weapon. Drepanosaurs were triangle-skulled reptiles with prehensile tails that would climb branches and eat insects. Charopteryx was the hammer-pants lizard squirrel, only the size of your hand. Don't waste a spear on it, but maybe you can take one out with a thrown pebble and cook it up as a light snack. Ginkgos and conifers are still around, so you can get tea and prehistoric nuts to supplement your diet of mostly meat. Still no fruit, though. You'll have to wait a long time for that. Quillworts, a type of grass-shaped tracheophyte, might be worth an attempt at eating. If you like consistency, fish are always around. Lungfish are common in freshwater environments, along with the newly popular ray-finned fish, or actinopterygians. Most fish around today fall into this group, so it must be nice to see a familiar body plan. Early turtles even appear in the Triassic, and if you can get through their tough shells and semi-aquatic stealth, they can make good eating. Rhynchosaurs were beaked little reptiles and were just about everywhere. Think Lunchables crossed with parrots. Oetosaurs, mostly herbivorous, heavily armored pseudoseuchians that need a rhinoplasty, aren't worth going after. They're too big for you to eat by yourself, and their armor is incredible, and in order to get close enough to reliably hit their weak spots, you're exposing yourself to getting rammed, trampled, or stabbed. Alacotosaurs might be better fare, thanks to their lower defenses. Pteroturpitin could feed you for days, especially if you can find a dry, arid area to store the meat in. Shrinkosaurus is too big to be worth taking down for meals, but if you can scavenge the horns, you might be able to use them as knives. Cutting edges are crucial when building your shelter, after all. And if you're in the early Triassic, there's no way you're not going to habitually hunt Lystrosaurus. This dog-sized herbivorous dicynodont lives all over the planet and was the dominant vertebrate on land during the early days of the period. We're considering a domestication project for the corporation to sustain our Triassic office. Ammonites, which were present in the Permian, explode in diversity in the Triassic. If you brave the storm-battered coast, you could catch ammonites in the shallows and then break them open with rocks, eating their soft insides raw or roasted. Just be careful in the water. The Triassic is home to some of the biggest carnivores in Earth's history, ichthyosaurs. The early eel morphs like Cybospondylus are already big enough to bite you in half. The later Himalayasaurus was more sleek and much bigger, liable to view you as an appetizer. And while the specific diet of the whale-sized ichthyotitan is unknown, at that scale it could swallow you whole without a second thought. You may encounter Tanystropheus on the shoreline as well. The long-necked ambush predator specializes in eating small fish, but I'd keep my distance just to be safe. As you follow the rivers back inland, plagued by memories of giant ichthyosaurs, keep a close eye on any movement in the water. Giant carnivorous amphibians or temnospondyls may not rule the world as they did in the Carboniferous, but human-sized, alligator-like metoposaurs and the gigantic mastodonsaurus are still serious threats. You can't let your guard down for a second here. Phytosaurs, which the most recent studies show to be pseudoseuchians, are heavily armored semi-aquatic ambush predators that grow up to 6 meters long. Between them and the temnospondyls, you're basically playing a platformer game every time you walk by a body of water. Remember therocephalians from the Therapsid glory days of the Permian? While not as common as they were back then, they're still around, with big forms like Moscarinus presenting a wolf-level threat, which, tend to have the edge on humans in melee combat, so if you see one, keep your distance and make sure your spear throw is completely accurate. Carrying enough spears to account for the sheer density of giant predators may be difficult though, as cynonathids are another mammal relative with the capacity to totally wreck you. But the new kids on the block are the biggest threats on land: archosauriforms, the ruling reptiles, and their closest relatives. Erythroseuchians are Pac-Man hulks, bobble-headed carnivores with lumbering bodies and jaws that could bite you in half. Loricotans, a group of terrestrial carnivorous pseudoseuchians, will cause you serious grief, and many are physically powerful enough to destroy all but your most durable of shelters in pursuit. They combine the raw strength of bears with the biting power and armor of crocodiles, and remain apex predators for the remainder of the Triassic. Some, such as Phaseoloseuchus, even reach decently large theropod sizes at over 2 metric tons. Whether you're armed or not, you don't want to mess with the pseudoseuchian gang. And, of course, dinosaurs roll up. Sauropodomorphs like Plateosaurus may prove to be a huge threat. Their large size and wicked claws, not to mention likely defensive attitude, are more than capable of taking out a human, and they're big enough that a single spear throw is more likely to make it angry than kill it. Basal saurischians such as Heitoresco are the size of tigers, and true theropods like Coelophysis, while certainly small enough for you to overpower in a one-on-one, may have lived and traveled in large groups. You are not getting away from 50 of these things no matter how many sharp sticks you're carrying. Sorry. Food stays at a solid 6. Small edible vertebrates, along with inverts like ammonites, are everywhere on land and in the water. The lack of fruit is still hurting, though horsetails and pine nuts help with some of the nutritional deficiencies. Shelter gets a 5 as Pangaea's sheer size makes hospitable areas rare and the coastal weather is still extreme, but it gets slightly better towards the end of the period. Weapons also flatline at a 7. Saber teeth are mostly gone, but scattered spikes, claws, and sharp stones fill a similar role. It's faunal threats that drops to a 3. The combination of croc amphibians, non-croc water crocs, non-croc land crocs, and the advent of dinosaurs is just asking for trouble, especially considering that predators are now big enough to make your safe space not so safe anymore. That's a 21 out of 40 for the Triassic, the lowest score in 200 million years. Congratulations! You made it past the warm-up rounds. The Jurassic period is a time of drastic change as Pangaea has now fully separated into multiple continents, significantly increasing the net habitable landmass on Earth. Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south both had large forested areas, splitting further by the end of the period, and the world overall was warm with high sea levels. Warm as in up to 10 Celsius or 18 Fahrenheit higher on average than today, resulting in typical equatorial summers over 41 Celsius or 106 Fahrenheit, with highs easily exceeding that. The fierce heat makes staying by reliable water sources even more critical. Avoid stagnant areas like swamps if possible. They're lurking grounds for Jurassic pseudoseuchians like Amphicatylus. Running water, like rivers, can be found even in the arid regions, creating areas with more vegetation and shade, but have the trade-off of being focus points for dangerous herbivores and dangerous carnivores. But water is water, so you will do what you must. Even when it's saltwater, because the ocean now has crabs in it. Delicious, wonderful crabs with whom you can now create a prehistoric approximation of sushi by combining it with seaweed and fish. Ray-finned fish are common now in marine and fresh water, and lobe-finned fish haven't quit yet either. Turtles are stinking cute, but you'll eat them if you have to. If you can catch true lizards, then they'll give you a decent amount of protein as well. Stem birds and their closest non-bird relatives might even taste like chicken. And if you miss the mammalian taste of bacon or beef, we can offer you small early mammals that likely don't taste anything like how you're thinking, but are kind of close, we guess. You can catch them by making a deadfall trap with sticks, rocks, and twisted plant fibers. Just make sure to check your traps regularly and to be careful doing so, or your snares might bring you more trouble than food. In the early Jurassic, that trouble could take the form of Coelophysis groups, holdovers from the days when dinosaurs were small and under the claws of pseudoseuchians. Dilophosaurus is the new apex predator of these early days, a tall biped as heavy as a grizzly bear and with powerful clawed arms. It'll steal your food as well as your life, and just might make terrifying booming sounds while doing it, depending on what those crusts were used for. You will need to be both stealthy and hyper-aware while foraging for edible plants, which include ginkgos for tea, fiddlehead ferns and horsetails for roasting, and Araucarian conifer nuts. If by a crazy stroke of luck you find what appears to be an unattended dinosaur or a crocodilian nest, those eggs could also provide a great source of protein. Just make extra sure it's not being guarded, as the big predators likely practiced some form of parental care. Speaking of big predators, the middle and late Jurassic is when theropods go berserk. Lion to polar bear-sized ceratosaurs are widespread, like Saltriovenator, Eoabellosaurus, and Ceratosaurus itself. Ceratosaurus in particular will be a huge threat thanks to its remains being commonly associated with rivers and other bodies of water in arid areas. It resource camped essentially, so it's going to stalk territory that would be otherwise ideal for your base building. At up to 1,000 kilos and with a skull nearly a meter long, Ceratosaurus is going to haunt your dreams and fuel your paranoia for a long time, even if you survive this stage of the tour. And before we go into the Jurassic dinosaurs that everybody and their dog knows by name, let's talk about megalosauroids. The Jurassic members of this theropod group were successful all over the world, with notable density in what is now China and North America. Many of them represent medium game hunters that would leap at a chance to target something the size of a human, while others approached Asian or even African elephants in size and might see your hut as a puzzle feeder. We'll encounter a different breed of megalosauroid in the Cretaceous, but for now let's put our attention onto the poster child of the Jurassic period, Allosaurus itself, the mad lad of the Mesozoic. Allosaurus was a diverse genus, with multiple species formally recognized and likely more still lurking. Fully grown adults ranged widely in size, from less than 1 ton to over 5 tons, and as such targeted just about every available prey option. They'd go after young or injured sauropods, sometimes adults if the injuries on Allosaurus skeletons are anything to go by. Stegosaurus was a target, and no matter if they stabbed the crap out of the Allosaurus in the process. A 2013 study found that Allosaurus specialized in quick downward strikes with its head, grabbing prey beneath it and pulling it back up with its jaws. It might be able to bite you in half before you could react, and it certainly had the aggressive temperament to do so. The animals that these theropods antagonized could also cause you serious problems. Sauropods, whether the eastern mamenchosaurs or the western macronarians, could grow large enough to simply sweep away your shelter in accident or crush you underfoot. And that's if you don't get their attention. Stegosaurs clearly had intense defensive capabilities and were willing to use them, so we recommend staying far out of range of any thagomizers you may encounter during your 4-week stay. Also, don't go in the water, ever. While the Jurassic's environment is far more hospitable on land in the early days of your tour, when the desolate landscape forced you to enter the ocean for food, the creatures that lurk in the deep now are far worse. Pliosaurs are big-jawed, flippered carnivores, essentially aquatic dragons, with some species reaching 12 meters long and 20 tons. Parvipelvian ichthyosaurs like Temnodontosaurus appear. Incredibly fast raptorial carnivores capable of ripping you to shreds in no time at all. The first true sharks evolved in the Jurassic as well. Oh, and if you wanted ocean-adapted pseudoseuchians, we've got those too. Metriorhynchids and teleosaurids were aquatic carnivores that patrolled the shallow seas, making your crab harvesting trips even more dangerous than they already were. The Jurassic earns a food score of 7. There are options in a variety of environments with terms of protein sources, and Araucaria conifers provide more not-quite fruit to snack on. We have crabs now! Yum! Shelter, unfortunately, drops to a 4. While the interior of the continents aren't as harsh as Pangaea's, overall temperatures are brutally hot, and the few places where you can get reliable water are also where you'll encounter the most predators. Weapons go down to a 6. Not because your access to weaponry changes, but because the spears you make are suddenly less effective when the animals trying to kill you are 50 times your size, and will keep fighting through severe injuries. In that spirit, faunal threats is at a 2. The animals in the oceans and rivers can kill you, countless varieties of theropods can kill you, the big herbivores can kill you, and accidentally destroy your house. I don't expect that many of you will last the full 4 weeks here, but it's televised, so that makes it fun. 19 out of 40. On to the Cretaceous, Vividen Corporation's personal favorite time period and the original home of Tyrant Prime. I don't know if I was allowed to say that last part, but I haven't been struck down by tyrannosaur-shaped lightning yet, so I think I'm good. Here is where the shapes of modern continents become somewhat recognizable. It's another hothouse world, with the middle of the period being so insufferably warm that ectotherms thrive at the north and south poles, and ice was nothing but a dream. No ice caps meant all that water went right to the ocean, eating up shorelines and splitting continents with vast inland seas. Those seas spill over into rivers, lakes, bayous, and floodplains, bringing a tropical aesthetic to a large portion of the world's landmass. Some later formations, like Prince Creek, were in the Arctic Circle during the colder part of the Cretaceous and may have experienced snow. The true game changers of the Cretaceous are angiosperms, or flowering plants. The plants you've gotten used to, cycads, ferns, ginkgos, horsetails, etc., are still around, but after the early Cretaceous, they're no longer the dominant form of Earth vegetation. Angiosperms have the advantage of producing flowers and fruit, protecting their seeds and encouraging animals to help in both pollination and seed dispersal. The strategy helped them conquer every continent of the Cretaceous. You heard me right, I said fruit! Does this mean that the scurvy that's been plaguing you for months will finally go away? Possibly. Increasing your vitamin C intake will strengthen your teeth, bones, and gums, as well as help in wound healing if you've gotten swiped by one of the many dangers you've encountered on the tour thus far. The late Cretaceous also sees the appearance of juniper bushes, which produce berry-like objects that aren't technically fruit, but look like it, although many of the juniper species' berries are in fact toxic. True fruit in the Cretaceous wasn't, unfortunately, the juicy, super sweet kind we're used to. Back then, fruit was more like peppercorn, more a protective covering than a huge nutritional bribe for potential seed dispersal animals. So your scurvy might improve if you find the right type of prehistoric juniper. Trial and error, I guess. Remember crabs? Now it's time for Crab 2, the freshwater edition. Tired of getting mauled by horrific sea reptiles every time you want a crab leg? Say no more. Crabs will now appear in freshwater environments near you, including rivers, swamps, and lakes. Dinocarcinus seems to be the only flavor for now, but we're sure more will pop up later. Crabs are good at that kind of thing. You should be glad that they're keeping you away from the ocean, because now you won't have to confront the creatures of Hal's aquarium. Mosasaurs, enormous marine lizards with explosive speed, the Ginsu shark Cretoxyrhina, because we needed a giant shark, leftover ichthyosaurs, fast and agile, and giant fish filled with endless rage who swallow human-sized prey whole. Staying on land is a good idea. Not that freshwater environments are exactly safe havens either. Sarcosuchus imperator was a 3 to 4 ton phyllitosaur that ate huge fish and unsuspecting dinosaurs, terrorizing North Africa. Deinosuchus was even bigger and filled a similar role in North America, crushing bone and muscle alike with its catastrophic bite. African Caprasuchus was smaller, but no less vicious. Be careful while fishing. Spinosaurids appear in the Cretaceous as well, ranging from the more terrestrially adapted generalists like Baryonyx and Suchomimus to waders like the gigantic Spinosaurus. They take down fish the size of cars in addition to snatching up prey opportunistically on land. The good news is that they're much easier to see than lurking crocodiles, so you have a better chance of avoiding them. Spinosaurs were most common in what is now Europe, Africa, and South America, so you might be able to avoid them if you tell your guide where you'd prefer to be dropped off. But dealing with the other megatheropods isn't any better. Carcharodontosaurs dominate Africa and South America for a good chunk of the Cretaceous. These shark-toothed giants regularly surpassed African elephant sizes and specialized in hunting large prey like sauropods, using their thin serrated teeth to rip through flesh. Acrocanthosaurus and the Cedar Mountain dragon ruled early Cretaceous North America. Carcharodontosaurus itself was the top dog on land in North Africa. In South America, Tyrannotitan, Mapusaurus, Meraxes, Giganotosaurus, and Taurovenator formed a gang of giants you don't want to live anywhere near. Not that you'd want to be near the animals that megatheropods hunted, either. The Cretaceous period was home to the biggest sauropods ever, the Titanosaurs. Alamosaurus pushed 40 tons in North America. Paralotitan in Africa was roughly comparable. South America has an infamous rogues gallery of giant sauropods. Dreadnoughtus, Batagatitan, Antarchosaurus, and Argentinosaurus itself, which surpassed the 90-ton mark. If you build your home on the ground, the megatheropods can brute force it, and the megasauropods can step on it. If against all odds you succeed in building a treehouse, the Titanosaurs might knock your tree down or accidentally break your home while foraging. It's a rough life. Oh, and hadrosaurs could totally demolish you, too. Listen for the loud calls and footsteps of a hadrosaur herd while you're setting up snares or throwing rocks at small mammals. Edmontosaurus traveled in herds of hundreds, a biological tsunami of hooves, muscle, and defensive personalities. Shantungosaurus was triple the size of an elephant. Ceratopsians are at least as dangerous in a one-on-one, although they seem to lack the gigantic herd behavior. Ceratopsians have the defenses to pretty much ignore your weapons if they're charging you, the durability to keep fighting when severely injured, and the firepower to crush you into paste. You'll even need to be careful around the smaller herbivores of the period, like Pachycephalosaurs. While they won't try to eat you, their bone domes are both effective shields and potent weapons that could easily crush your ribs if you don't get out of the way of a charge. They're also faster than you are, so climbing a tree might be your best bet. Similar in size and aggression, but varying in diet, are the Dromaeosaurs. Turkey to polar bear-sized carnivores with sharp teeth, wicked hand claws, and pinning talons that will keep you still while they eat you alive. Multiple species like Deinonychus and Utahraptor may have practiced group hunting or mobbing behavior, meaning that you won't just be defending yourself against a single wolf-plus-sized predator, but maybe a half dozen or more. You're also in the perfect size range to be easy meals for medium to large dromaeosaur species, and the same goes for Megaraptorans. Megaraptorans are a subset of the Tyrannosauroidea, but instead of going with the giant head, tiny arm build of the Tyrannosaurids, they had long, thin jaws and absolutely yoked arms that ended with grim reaper claws. Megaraptor itself was about a ton when fully grown, with claws as long as a grown human's forearm. Its jaws are at the perfect height to bite your head right off as it disembowels you. Lovely thought, especially when you learn that the biggest Megaraptoran, Maip macrothorax, was triple the size of Megaraptor. Good luck fending off that monster. Asdarchid pterosaurs are another threat you might not be used to. In the modern era of your planet, flying animals typically don't present an immediate threat to humans, apart from being disease vectors. Asdarchid throats and torsos were too small for them to want to eat you whole, but that might not prevent them from picking you apart with their lance-sized murder beaks. And now that brings us to the greatest faunal threat of the Cretaceous period, tyrannosaurs. Not necessarily the gigantic tank with teeth species like Zhusheng tyrannus or Tyrannosaurus itself, although those did have the senses, endurance, intelligence, and raw power to chase you down for miles and tear you to pieces. As demonstrated by the YouTube channel Kentucky Ballistics, you'd need high-power firearms to significantly injure a Tyrannosaurus, and that wasn't even accounting for the keratinized surface of its extremely robust skull. Your sharp rock spears aren't going to be very effective. Sorry. But the big ones aren't the biggest problem. It's the small as in bear tyranno-sized, long-legged, incredibly fast tyrannosaurs that are most likely to kill you. Think Nanotyrannus, Chenjosaurus, Teratophonius. The sleek runners, some of which have evidence for group behavior, that can run faster than you and for longer. They still have the jaws to kill you in one bite, and they're small enough that you're the perfect meal. Try sleeping well knowing that these things could be stalking you, surrounding your log cabin, and waiting for you to forage. Food, surprisingly, remains a 7. Vitamin C is slightly more available than before, but other than that, you're still dealing with the pine nuts, small land animals, and fish as you were in the Jurassic. Shelter is a 4. Suddenly, the box of large branches you've been living in is nowhere near as effective of a defense as before, and the high prevalence of bayous and swamps makes finding solid ground by fresh water in a safe area difficult. Not to mention the absolutely brutal temperatures, which would keep you constantly seeking a drinking source and exposing yourself to predators and the elements. Weapons are once again at 6 for similar reasons to the Jurassic. Faunal threats drops to a 1. The lowest possible score. Everything here is dangerous, even the smaller animals can easily kill you, and many of the big predators can ignore your spears as if they were toothpicks. The Cretaceous gets a score of 18 out of 40, indicating that many of you won't last even close to the full 4 weeks you signed up for. You're gonna love the Paleogene. The continents basically have the same shapes that you're used to in your time. Not that you'll be able to tell unless you're looking at it from space, but still. The period starts out incredibly warm and gradually cools closer to modern temperatures. Proper fruit appears. You'll still have to test each one individually for toxicity levels, but now all of your vitamin C needs can be met. Birds begin to diversify enormously, with large species of ground birds leaving tempting eggs for you to snatch. Presuming you don't get caught by the parents and shaken like a rag doll, of course. Many modern forms of edible fish appear, including catfish, arowanas, and pike. We even observe the appearance of legumes, in case you were really craving relatives of beans or peanuts. Small mammals abound all over the world, great fodder for your snares that you've surely perfected building by now, and some herbivorous mammals like taniodonts got decently large. Lizards, small snakes, and turtles provide additional sources of protein if necessary. If you're going to set up shop in the rainforest that covers most of the planet, you'll need to keep an eye out for stinging insects and spiders. South America is a danger zone with car-sized carnivorous turtles and 12-meter snakes lurking in the wetlands and rivers of the jungle. Later in the period, we see gigantic carnivorous birds like Paracrax, which was 2 meters tall and could disembowel you with a kick, following in the footsteps of the earlier threat Gastornis. Crocodilomorphs survived the Cretaceous extinction, with the 3-meter Borealisuchus lurking in waterways to take down prey your size. Early Dinoceratans, superficially rhino-like saber tusks, are too big to be worth hunting and could kill you if you got too close. Some of the most relevant threats of the Paleogene are the Mesonychids, large carnivores that kind of look like wolves but aren't closely related at all. Watch out for Encalagon in particular. It's named after a mountain-crushing dragon from the Tolkien mythos, and its powerful jaws will break your bones as surely as its namesake broke the towers of Thangorodrim during the War of Wrath. Overall, the Paleogene is really quite tame as you'd expect for wilderness survival millions of years in the past anyway. It gets an 8 for food. Fruit and legumes appearing make a noticeable difference in your overall health. Shelter's a solid 7. The temperature decreasing helps, and the dense global jungle has endless hiding spots for you to use as a framework for a branch-based fortification. Weapons are another 7. Spears are far more useful than they were in the Cretaceous. And faunal threats' blessed day rises to an 8. There aren't nearly as many dangerous predators or herbivores, and those present are an order of magnitude less powerful than the primordial dragons you recently escaped. 30 out of 40 isn't bad at all. Don't get used to it, because the Neogene brings the danger level back up. Geographically, modern Earth sees the ice caps grow and global temperatures lower, leading to notable seasonality across much of the globe. Grasslands dominate much of Earth's landmass, which encourages the development of fast grazers like horses and bison. The forests are still a better place for you to bunk down, as they have better protection from weather, solar radiation, and stampedes of large herbivores. That's also where the fruit is. Remember vitamin C? You still need it. Maple trees also show up in the Neogene, so if your sweet tooth is out of control after months of deprivation, you could tap some maples. You might draw the attention of small mammals and birds doing so, but you could take advantage of their interest to set up snares at the maple taps or simply throw rocks at them. Dessert before dinner, I guess. If you're truly stealthy, you might stand a chance of taking down a deer before they notice you, although their senses are so good that it isn't likely without setting traps. A trapped deer invites unwanted attention, even in the woodlands. Neogene Europe and South America are home to the giant sabechids, land crocs with long limbs and enormous bone-crushing jaws. Borinasuchus at 5+ meters and about a ton is one of the most physically powerful land predators of the entire Cenozoic, and its scaly armor can resist spear throws. False saber-toothed cats, or nimravids, also cover multiple continents. Their stealth, giant cutting teeth, and climbing ability makes them an existential threat to you, whether on the grasslands or in the woods. Terror birds have their heyday in this 20 million year stretch, giving us rockstar taxa like Devonsensia, Kalenkin, and Titanus, each of whom are at least twice the size of a typical adult human and capable of snapping your neck with a casual bite, as well as running much faster than you, and keeping up the pace for a long time. Cenozoic theropods were kind of killer awesome. More predatory pressure comes from bears, who roll up towards the end of the period, along with hyenodonts, large bone crushers that dominated Africa. Megacytheria may have been as large as Borinasuchus, and its thick skull gives it both high offense and high defense. And of course, entelodonts. The hell pigs are raging omnivores that ate nuts, bones, meat, berries, and whatever else they felt like if you gave a really fast hippo the temperament of a rabid raccoon. They'll kill you for the love of the game and eat you because they're bored. Oh, and if you needed the warning, the Neogene Ocean has both Leviathan and Ototus Megalodon. Don't go swimming in the ocean. Or freshwater systems either. Purosaurus lurks in the rivers of Brazil in case you really wanted to encounter a caiman bigger than an African elephant. The Neogene takes home a food score of 8, keeping all the goodwill from the Paleogene. Shelter goes to 6. Grasslands make good sleeping spots rare, confining you to woodland areas. Weapons stay steady at 7, with spears, snares, atlatls, and very sharp rocks giving you all that you need. Faunal threats deflates from an 8 to a 5. Land crocs, saber-teeth, entelodons, terror birds, and hyaenodons mean you'll need to be on constant guard no matter what continent you appear on. 26 out of 40 is still one of the best scoring periods so far, though. On to the final frontier, the Quaternary, the most recent 2.5 million years. This period sees intense glaciation in the northern and southern extremes of the planet, with ice advancing and retreating in cycles and burying everything in its path. Summers are cool and winters are brutal, with only equatorial territories experiencing reasonable weather patterns. Megafauna get big. Think ground sloths, mastodons, mammoths. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my, are all present, with cave bears and steppe lions lurking across Eurasia. Food availability across much of the world drops like a rock during winters, with fruit trees going dormant and other vegetation dying for the season. Horses, camels, and bison thrive on multiple continents, and saber-toothed cats are some of the dominant predators in the early period, with Smilodon lasting until just a few thousand years ago. The cold is a problem, yes. Finding food in an ice age is also a problem. But your greatest obstacle towards the end of the Quaternary is the advent of more you. Humans and near humans. Armed, hungry, dangerous. They don't speak your language. They travel in groups, slaughtering megafauna and building camps to further centralize their near-industrial massacre. They've been here long enough to make proper bows, a resource that would only help you if you could just get your hands on one and keep it for a few weeks. The question that will determine how you fare in this primeval world is how the native humans feel about you. If they see you as a threat, or a potential drain on their resources, they will kill you. They're wild trained, stronger and more athletic than you are, with more experience using the weapons at the time. But if you can prove that you're worth keeping around, a group might accept you. They'll think you're broken in the head, spouting gibberish at them all the time, but give them your willing participation in hunts, and there's a chance they'll help you survive to the end of the tour. That concludes our orientation, with the Quaternary getting a food score of 6, a shelter score of 5, a weapon score of 7, and faunal threats of 4. It finishes at a respectable 22, mainly due to the existential crisis of repeated glacial cycles starving half the planet, combined with potential competition from other humans. Now, let's review the overall ranking for the orientation. Did you take notes? The least dangerous time period was the Paleogene, in 10th place with an incredible 30 out of 40. In 9th place is the Neogene with 26, Devonian, 25, the Carboniferous, 23. The Quaternary and Permian tied for 5th place with 22 points, mostly brought down by brutal environmental factors. The Triassic is in 6th place with 21 points, followed by the Jurassic with 19 points. The Cretaceous and Silurian tie for 4th place with 18 points each. The Cretaceous is dangerous because of its animals, while the Silurian is an inhospitable environment in which it's easy to starve and get cancer. That's also true of the 2nd place pick, the 16-point Ordovician, which may as well have been an alien planet. And finally, the most dangerous prehistoric time period with 15 points is the Cambrian, a combination of toxic atmospheric composition, complete lack of shelter from solar radiation or extreme weather, needing to go into the water to find food, and barely any available weapon building materials make the Cambrian an absolute nightmare for humans. If we hadn't given you the equipment we did, you'd be dead within minutes of arriving. You're welcome. Do you have any questions before you step out of the chronogate and into the noxious ocean world of the Cambrian? Feel free to review some of our other orientation videos while you're waiting. The corporation is patient, after all, and the better prepared you are, the more interesting a game show we'll be able to put on. As a special treat, if you make it to the end of the Quaternary, you'll be allowed to meet Tyrant Prime in person. The cosmic tyrannosaurian glory of his being might incinerate you instantly, but it's a great honor, trust me. I'm the Vividen, and I'll see you the next time I toss very willing and informed participants into a bloodbath game show for the entertainment of Archosaurian gods.